Sony just announced the next generation A7V, and it's going to be one of the best-selling prosumer cameras ever made, in my opinion. Now, Sony did send me a loaner unit for testing, but no input was given other than the normal briefing of features and whatnot. So all the thoughts and testing I have done are on my own with zero Sony input, just to be clear. So this isn't going to be like a full-fledged hardcore review because I don't have access to developing RAW files yet. The Imaging Edge app isn't updated yet for the RAW files, so I can't really test dynamic range testing in the real world, which I always like to do, especially with a new sensor. So we're gonna have to rely on Gerald, I guess, Gerald Undone. We'll see what he does. I guess he might be able to do that using video footage. I'm not exactly sure. But anyways, as far as dynamic range goes, the A7V is supposed to have more. It's supposed to have 16 stops as opposed to 15, which is a pretty significant update in my opinion. I mean, a full stop, more dynamic range, and a stack sensor is huge. But again, I was kind of forced to use JPEG mode because I can't develop the RAW files. I can't even view them except on the camera. So, and I didn't know this right away, which is my fault, just to let you guys know. So a lot of the testing I did initially, I can't use any of that stuff as far as photos go. So I went back out shooting in JPEG mode, which is kind of cool actually, because, you know, the result just comes right off the camera and it's like already baked. You don't have to do any developing. So I haven't used JPEG in such a long time. It's actually kind of fun. So the new Sony A7V is going to go for about $28.99 US, which is significantly more than the A7 IV, but Sony upgraded almost everything, and in my mind, making it very comparable to the flagship Sony A1 Mark II. Now, clearly the sensor is not the same, there is that, but overall feature set wise, it's crazy close. And as far as I can tell, the A7V has the same autofocus system that just came out in the latest 4.0 firmware for the A1 Mark II and the A9 III. So the A7V menu looks very similar in the AF area in particular, as you can see here. So if we go into the subject recognition and you go over to the target here, you can go over to the right and notice how there's all these arrows. So you can actually go in here and dial in the settings per subject. So for each subject, you can go in there and dial in the different settings, which is incredibly powerful. And like I said, this is what the A1 and the A9 III has, as far as I could tell. Now, I don't have an A1 II in hand here to just compare A and B. Speaking of the autofocus, the A7V has the best autofocus I have ever used on a camera to date. Now, I have used the A9 III and the A1 II for brief periods, but that was only when they first came out, and honestly, not in enough situations to get a really good feel for it. And also, this was before the new 4.0 huge firmware upgrade came out for the A1 and the A9 III. So the A7V I tested with moving cars. I tested my side-by-side with my brother driving it, my dog Buddy. What are you looking at? Look at the buddies. You happy? You happy, buddy? No. And just a lot of real world stuff here and there. Its tracking abilities are next level, and just look at this side-by-side footage when it goes behind the bushes. You see how it just stays locked on the side-by-side even with all that distracting stuff in the foreground? Absolutely incredible, and I've never had a camera do that before. And again, just check out all these different subject options. You have auto, human, animal, bird, insect, car, train, and airplane. And again, I already said you could dial in these settings for each. And you can include or disclude whatever you want in the auto area. So if you go into auto and you go over, you can like uncheck or check whatever options you want. I just have everything selected for now, and the camera seems to be working great in auto for the most part. In addition to that, we have the new focus areas as well. If we go in here, we have the XL size, which you can see here. Sorry, we got XL, large, medium, small, and now we have extra small. So you can see just how tiny that little red dot is. And that allows for incredible precision control. So if you're shooting through branches and things like that, that little autofocus point is crazy accurate. Now, in addition to that, we also have this new custom area where you can actually dial in the shape and size. So you can make it vertical, horizontal. Pretty cool to have that as well. And then, of course, down here is the tracking area. So with the new partially stacked sensor, we have a much faster sensor readout speed, which means very little rolling shutter and 30 frames per second shooting, which is the same as the A1 Mark II offers. Now, you need to be in electronic shutter mode for this, but since the sensor readout speed is so fast, this is a non-issue in all the testing that I did so far. Mind you, I have only had the camera for about a week. And that 30 frames per second is blackout free shooting, as you just saw, which is incredible. Now, the stabilization also got a huge upgrade from the A7C2 and the A7IV by 2 stops. So 7.5 effective stops now versus 5.5 on the A7C2 and the A7IV. So this was very noticeable right away, and it also has the new dynamic active stabilization, which crops in quite a bit, but it almost looks like you're using a tripod when you're holding it, and I really like that feature as well. This is active versus standard. This is dynamic active. So I wasn't able to put it in dynamic active when recording, but hand holding, you can see just how smooth this is. I mean, this is incredible. Pretty much looks like I'm on a tripod, but I can move, you know. Shooting in 24p, by the way. All right, guys, it's just a walking test with the new Sony A7V, and right now I'm using standard stabilization with the 20mm f1.8 lens. Just to let you know, I am shooting in S-Log, so I just wanted to show you how good the stabilization works because it's got 2 more stops. So now we're talking 7.5 stops versus 5.5 on the previous gen, and also on the A7C2, which I own. So let me just turn on active here. So that's just standard, so you could see how much better just standard is. It's actually quite a bit. It almost looks like active on my A7C2. Now this is active. So I'm able to turn it on active while recording. Now dynamic active crops in even more, and it'll be even smoother than this, but I need to stop recording in order to put it on dynamic active. In addition, dynamic active does need the newer Sony lenses in order to work. It doesn't work with the Viltrox lens I tried earlier, and it didn't work with the older Zeiss 55mm lens, just to let you know. This lens is not stabilized, so this is just sensor stab. And again, 20mm with a dynamic active. You could see the crop isn't really too much for 20mm on a full frame. So let me show you what it looks like when I run. Now I'm running with the camera, dynamic active on. I wasn't running full speed or anything, but still running. That's what you can expect. So again, I was using JPEG mode, and the colors and overall image quality are killer, as expected, and here are a few sample photos. Now, I was sort of forced to use JPEG, as I already mentioned, but honestly, this has been like a pleasant surprise because I always shoot RAW, and it's really nice to just have a finished product straight off the camera for a change, you know? But the lack of editing latitude with the RAW file is clearly not the same as JPEG, so it just is what it is. Another cool thing about shooting JPEG, though, is you have access to the creative modes, including the new film look options. Now, I did take a ton of RAW photos specifically for testing dynamic range in the real world because it has this new RAW HQ quality, so it's compressed HQ, which is supposedly like lossless, but the Sony Imaging Edge software is not updated yet at the time of this review, so there's no support for the A7V RAW files at this time. The RAW photo testing will have to wait for my more long-term review, which is coming because I am absolutely 100% buying this camera as soon as possible. I also plan on making several tutorials for this beast, so be sure to hit that subscribe button if that is something that interests you. It also offers pre-capture, and it records at 0.03 to 1 second before the shutter press, so you could dial that in, and you can also set it for up to 30 frames per second, but you can change that to whatever frames per second you want for pre-capture, which is really cool, so you won't have to worry about filling up the whole buffer shooting only 30 frames per second in pre-capture, just as an example. Now this also has the new Bion's XR processor chip in there, which has an integrated AI chip. So instead of another AI chip on the board, it's just integrated into the one chip. So because of that, the camera battery life has gotten significantly more efficient. Sony's saying like 23% more battery life, which is unbelievable. Honestly, usually the battery life goes down. Plus the screen is bigger on the back, so you'd think it would use more juice. Plus it's double the resolution and has a better color gamut as well, so they upgraded that. The viewfinder is the same as the A7 IV though, just to let you know. But in addition to that integrated AI chip, the thermals are a lot less, so it doesn't give off as much heat. But to combat the heat, they also upgraded the thermals in this camera with the new Sigma design heatsink setup, which I believe is the same exact setup that the A1 Mark II has and the A9 Mark III have. So this can now record 4K 60 full frame oversampled without overheating. Now that's just incredible. So you're talking 90 minutes in like approximately 70 degrees, Sony's claiming. I tested it and it went till the memory card was full. So more than good enough for me. Sony's also claiming that in like 100-degree temperatures, you'll be able to record 4K 60 for up to 60 minutes, which again, that's just incredible how good the thermals are without having an integrated fan like the FX3 or the FX2, for example. So with the AI processor in there, we also get cool features like auto-framing and framing stabilizer. So let me show you what auto-framing looks like, because I use this feature all the time. All right, guys, so I got auto-framing on right now, and it's just set to the default settings. So it should crop in to my face. I don't know why it's not. All right, I figured it out. I had the subject detection set to auto. When it's set to auto, it doesn't work. So now I have it set to human, and it is working. So this is a great feature, kind of works like a cameraman. As you can see, it's following me around. Very, very cool feature. Perfect for when you're filming by yourself. Let me look out. Check out over here. And now watch how it behaves when I come towards the camera. It works really well. I mean, it keeps you right where you want to be. So we'll see how this looks on camera, but auto framing is a great feature. I use it quite a bit when I'm filming by myself, especially when I'm like reviewing, you know, I'll set the camera up on a tripod and I'm like walking around, like on this bridge, for example. This is a perfect use case of when I would use it. Like if I was testing a lens right now, I would be like looking that way, then I'd be looking this way, sort of thing. And it looks like a cameraman. I mean, auto framing is fantastic. The A7C2 has it. And like I said, that's what I've been using for like at least a year now. So I'm super pumped that this camera has it as well. So one downside, arguably, for the new A7V, for some people, it does not have OpenGate. Now, what OpenGate is, that allows you to basically record the entire sensor when recording video. How the cameras work that don't have OpenGate is they basically record in like 16:9, so you're not actually using the top and the bottom of the sensor when recording video. So this is like a 7K sensor, but it only records in 4K. So it oversamples from 7K and then, you know, brings it down to the 4K when actually recording video. So theoretically, if this had OpenGate, you know, it would be able to record like 7K or whatever the number would be. I'm not exactly sure what that number would be, but Sony just is not allowing that at this time. So I don't know if maybe a firmware update will allow for OpenGate, or if it's just something where there's going to have to be some kind of engineering change in order to allow that to happen. But the bottom line is the A7V does not have OpenGate. So if you're somebody that does a lot of vertical shooting and you just like using open gate, so you can do horizontal and vertical and just record open gate, you're not going to be able to do that with this camera. So it is still 4K, so you can still, convert that to vertical in post, and it's still enough resolution, but it doesn't give you the same cropping like latitude as open gate would. I honestly don't do that much vertical shooting in my case, so to me, I really don't care that much, but that's just my take on it. I just don't really shoot vertical very often. If I was making Instagram reels and stuff like that all the time, that would probably mean a lot more to me. But I don't really do that. I kind of mostly just stick to YouTube stuff, and I just prefer the landscape format. So I guess you can call me a little more old school in that way. So again, as far as the camera body goes, this is very similar to the A7 IV, but we do have 2 USB ports now, so that is a significant change there. So you can actually power the camera with one of the ports and do a data transfer or do like web streaming or something with the other one, just as an example. So you have 2 instead of that micro USB port like on the A7 IV. So we got the dual USB-Cs, which is really nice. And of course we have the larger 3.2-inch screen that has the awesome 4-axis articulation. So you could use it, like a selfie camera if you want, like this. But what's really cool about it is you could swivel it out like this and shoot from the hip, which I really like. And then you can swivel it downward, like this for over your head. And then again, if you need it in selfie mode, you can record like that. And you also have the ability to aim it like this, so you can get down on the ground really low. And you can go this way if you want to go over your head. So at the end of the day, Sony hit it out of the park with the A7 V. I really feel like this is a baby A1 Mark II for less than half the price. The increased dynamic range, significantly better stabilization, much faster readout speeds, huge subject detection enhancements, 30 frames per second blackout free, new thermals, and of course the larger high resolution 4-axis LCD screen are all huge improvements and make this a worthy upgrade for those in the market looking for the best hybrid mirrorless do everything style camera for the money. That's why I am going to buy the A7 V, because everything that I'm interested in has been significantly upgraded, and I'm really excited about this. I've been doing a lot more sports shooting lately with my kids in sports now, so I want the better grip as opposed to the A7C, which I actually moved into my studio camera now. The A7 IV I pulled out, it's actually back there. So guys, if you're looking for more detail as far as the specs and everything like that go, I did a breakdown video where I go over every single feature that this camera has, like all the new features, and I break them down in great detail. So be sure to check that video out if you want to see that. But I just wanted to show you in this review what the camera actually does. So that's what the review is about, like real world, video and photos and stuff like that. But again, the specs and breakdown, I have a video for that if you're interested in all the nitty gritty type stuff. Also, I did an A7 IV versus A7 V video. So I just compare the key differences between those two cameras for those in the market. If you're thinking about getting the A7 IV, or should you save and maybe get the A7 V, I break all that down in that video. So anyways, guys, please stay tuned, because like I said, I'm going to buy this camera and I'm going to do a long-term review. I'm also going to do a raw photo analysis, and I'm going to create lots of tutorials, including a beginner's guide for the A7 V. So, all right, guys. I hope you got what you were looking for in this review, and I will catch up with you soon. Take care.